Border towns across Europe have started taking down barriers. Traffic at the French-Belgian border town of Alloin can now pass freely again after 3 months of coronavirus closures. For thousands of locals, this means they can finally visit family again or cross into Belgium to buy cheaper goods.
Oh yes, economically for tobacco I pay more than $500 in France, and here I get it for $225. I save a lot.
Before the pandemic, around 3.5 million people would cross an EU border every day, half of them to go to work. In Italy, hundreds of commuters have headed back to work in neighboring Switzerland, while in France, high-speed trains set off towards Germany again.
We're going with our children to see their grandmother and spend time with the family for the holidays. It feels good, finally.
But not all countries have given their green light to their neighbors. Spain will keep its borders closed for another week. And some countries, including Denmark, have kept restrictions in place only for people from countries they deem unsafe, such as the UK and Sweden. The wider reopening of European borders also means airlines can return to the skies. Like many others, British budget carrier EasyJet was forced to ground its entire fleet at the end of March.
It's 11 weeks, as the fleet has been grounded, so super exciting to get flying today.
The need to get Europe's $850 billion tourism industry up and running again is urgent. Restaurants in Europe's most visited city, Paris, have lost 3 months of revenue, and new social distancing rules will cut capacity by at least half.
Some will not come out unscathed. Let me remind you that our troubles start in 2015 with the bombings, and from there we had fewer tourists. And then 2018 to 2019 we had the yellow vests. And then at the end of last year, the strikes linked to social movements over the pension reform. So you've got people, restaurant owners, who've been hit very hard.
The European Commission expects the region's economy to shrink at least 7.4% this year, and last month proposed an additional $845 billion coronavirus aid package. As Europe's borders cautiously reopen, businesses hope the summer season, crucial for the bloc's economic recovery, can still be salvaged. Sibel Karkus, TRT World.
For more on Europe's reopening, Hosuk Lee-Makiyama joins us from Stockholm. He's the director of the independent think tank, the European Centre for International Political Economy. Hosuk, thank you so much for your time. This is no doubt a major step on Europe's road to recovery, but it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's quite complex. How difficult is this going to be to implement, and is it going to be effective?
Well, actually, it's going to be as difficult as the period until now has been during the lockdown, because we have seen very different approaches to international travel, even within the Schengen area, the 26 EU and non-EU countries that tie together in a visa-free travel zone. And we have, for example, the creation of what most people have called the Baltic bubble, where Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia has formed their own open area during this period. And France has reciprocally opened up to everyone except, for example, the UK. And a number of countries has actually taken very strong precautious approaches towards Sweden, where the number of incidents are still above 50 cases per 100,000, where I happen to be stranded at the moment by accident.
Do you think that summer can be salvaged, even with some of these borders reopening? Not to everyone, as you say. Is there any indication that people are feeling encouraged and confident to travel?
Well, Schengen area has really reshaped the everyday life of people, and I believe that there are more people like me who happen to be stranded in the country where they have been locked down. So I'm actually separate from my work office and my family at the moment, and the real truth is that our economies depend on it, and we have taken a much bigger hit in the EU than the rest of the world. We are estimating at least a GDP loss of 7.5% in the Eurozone, while I believe that this is probably a gross underestimation because it hasn't actually properly taken into account the loss of the tourism received. And we are already seeing data that suggests that 80% of the Europeans in the Schengen area plans to visit another Schengen country within the coming 3 months. So there's a lot of wanderlust, and there are a lot of colleagues and family to see. But also from a much stronger argument for a quick recovery, at least in the travel habit, is the fact that countries like Greece and Spain depend on easily between 10 to 20% of their GDP and workforce from the tourism industry. But the question is really not about the economics and the numbers and whether people are willing to travel. It is actually the question of whether actually there are going to be planes. We heard in the intermission right now that several airlines has been going into either state aid procedures or even bankruptcy. So will the planes be flying? Will people be able to go where they want to go? That's the real question.
It is. It's a question indeed. The other question is this battle or this tension between health versus wealth. We've seen second waves affecting China and the United States. With this reopening of borders, is there a concern that there will be a second wave across Europe and it's going to have an even greater economic impact? Is it too much too soon?
Well, we don't know until we see the borders opening up. And we need to also bear in mind that actually, although we are reopening the Schengen area, we have not opened up towards nationals from third countries, meaning that actually from Asia and United States and also from Turkey, the borders are still closed, which basically means that actually we will see some return of the domestic tourism, but when it comes to real value, where the real turnover is, which is the international tourism, is still on a hold. And that, of course, means that, well, we may be actually taking a huge risk with a little reward in the end.
Well, Hosuk Lee-Makiyama, stranded there in Stockholm. Interesting points. Thank you so much for your time.